And welcome to our magnetic and other features section. We'll be looking at sunspots, coronal holes, and more. So won't you join me? First thing we're checking out here is the Geospace Magnetosphere movie. So this is 4 hours of data here, compiled into what we call the Space Weather Modeling Framework. If you want to read about that, go to the Geospace Magnetosphere movies page and click on details. It includes things like the solar wind, electron flux, magnetic fields, and more. Anyway, nothing too major happening there over the past 4 hours. That data courtesy University of Michigan. Next, we're looking at the heliospheric current sheet. We've got a South Pole current sheet rapidly approaching. Earth is currently in a North Pole current sheet shown here in green. The plasma that comes out of the sun is oriented to one pole or the other. And the plasma that the Earth is currently experiencing is oriented to the north solar polar field. Here are the GOES magnetometers over the past 3 days. Nothing too exciting happening there. Fairly smooth magnetic curves there. For you new viewers, the N's and M's stand for noon and midnight local time for the GOES 16 and GOES 17 satellites. They have geosynchronous high-altitude near-equatorial orbits. Here's your line-of-sight plot viewing the heliospheric current sheet from Earth's perspective instead of the top view. We've got some interesting sunspots in the northern hemisphere to talk about. First, the line-of-sight coronal hole plot. And you can see some trans-equatorial South Pole coronal holes here rotating in. Right over there, shown in red. I'll be keeping an eye on those, and when I say eye on, well, pardon the pun. Next, the 193 angstroms ultraviolet imagery here from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Those South Pole coronal holes not really coming into view very well yet, mainly just North Pole coronal holes. Just rotating past the Earth-facing zone. Some plasma activity down here as well. Let's take a look at that and some additional frequencies. Here's 304 angstroms. And let's actually rock this back and forth here as we see some filamentary instability happening around that area. And 304 is a great wavelength to view that. That sunspot there, not particularly active. It's only an alpha class sunspot. It has rather simple magnetic fields. It's unlikely to produce any major flares. There was a coronal mass ejection on the far side of the sun. We'll cover it momentarily. First, some additional views. By the way, the Integrated Space Weather Analysis Center has been down. So here's a sunspot view. They've mostly stayed stable. There are a bunch of minor sunspots up here in the northwestern portion. Most likely spot to see major flares is out of this one here. It's quite significant. It's got complex magnetic fields. And we'll be watching that one. And those other regions there, those are not sunspots yet. So here's the southern hemisphere in 171 plus 1700 angstroms. That's 24 hours of data there, folks. And here's the northern hemisphere where most of the activity has been generated recently. No major flares here over the past 24 hours. Just some minor C-class intensifications. Don't be surprised to see some larger flares in the coming days. No relativistic particles have made it to Earth from any of that activity. Let's look at the real-time solar wind before we blast through even more data. So we've seen the solar wind speed subsiding here. A recent minor uptick. It's about 450 kilometers per second at the moment. Solar wind density about 8.6 protons per cubic centimeter. It looks like the subsiding of another coronal hole wind stream. We never saw geomagnetic unrest conditions from that or anything like that. KP is at 1. KP index is a measurement of global geomagnetism. Each bar represents 3 hours there. So geomagnetic calm conditions. Here are changes to Earth's B field expressed as Geospace delta B. The scale you're looking at is nanotesla. And conditions remain calm. It's 4 hours of data, similar to where we started out with the Geospace Magnetosphere movie, Earth's magnetic moment from space. This is Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Next, a diagram of the solar system will show you the 1 week forecast. And there's where things will be in 7 days. We'll have a crescent waxing moon by the 3rd of February. And here's a star chart. If you're up before dawn, you may see Mars and Venus rising ahead of the sun. Also Mercury. If you've got a very low horizon, you may see Mercury rising. And if you've got great images, let us know in the comments. Link us to your Instagram or whatever. We did see some coronal mass ejections here. They were on the far side of the sun. Here are the views from the LASCO C2 and C3. And while these may look like Earth-directed coronal mass ejections, they are indeed not. Nearly all of that ejecta on the far side of the sun, not the Earth side. So that's about the extent of what's going on at the moment, folks. We've got another space weather video coming out here in a moment. Make sure you attend that premiere. If you've checked this one out, thanks everybody who's tuned into our live premiere events and so on. Bonus features are coming, and if you haven't tuned into our meteorology segments, check those out. We've been showing rational models here at the Smash News Network. Least busted, name in news.